By winter you'll birth my children, giant Viking roared at the woman. At the edge of the cliff stood Astrid, her cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders, staring out at the dark waters below. Her heart pounded, not from the cold, but from the rumors that had reached her village. A giant had come to their lands, a Viking warlord with strength beyond measure and eyes that carried storms within them. The villagers had spoken of him in hushed tones, their words trembling like the leaves in winter. Eirik of the Shattered Fjord. A man whose name was feared across the northern lands. Some said he was merciless, others said he was cursed. But there was one truth they all whispered: he was coming for her. Astrid did not know why. She was only a healer, a scholar of herbs and old stories. She had spent her life tending to the sick, reading the faded runes of her ancestors, and walking the forests to gather what the land offered. And yet, here she was, alone on the cliff, waiting for the man who would decide her fate. The first sound was not his footsteps, but the ground itself trembling beneath him. Then came a shadow larger than any human, a figure that seemed carved from the mountain itself. Eirik appeared on the cliff, towering and massive, his braided hair whipped by the wind, his fur-lined cloak flowing like a dark river behind him. His eyes, gray and stormy, fixed on Astrid. "You are Astrid," he said, his voice deep and commanding, carrying across the frozen air. "By winter you will bear children from my bloodline. You will come with me." Astrid's lips parted in shock. She had expected a warrior, perhaps even a brutal man, but not this certainty, this force that seemed to demand her very soul. Her voice trembled, but she answered, I do not belong to anyone." Eirik's eyes narrowed, and yet there was something in his gaze, a flicker of pain behind the storm. "You will," he said simply. "It is not a request, it is a necessity. The curse on my clan can only be broken through the line of your ancestors." Astrid stepped back, feeling the cliff edge under her boots. Her mind raced. Her village had spoken of prophecies, of magic and bloodlines intertwined with fate. Could this be real? Could she truly carry the key to lifting a curse? Fear clutched her chest, but there was also a strange pull, a curiosity she could not explain. "I will not be taken by force," she said, "even if you are mighty." Eirik's lips curved, not quite a smile. "I do not intend to force you. The bond must be willing, though it may demand courage." He stepped closer, each footfall shaking the snow beneath him. "Come with me willingly, and you may find purpose beyond the walls of your village. Refuse, and the winter will take more than you think." Astrid's eyes widened. There was truth in his words, she could feel it. The northern winds were harsh and the fjord claimed many lives, but still, the thought of leaving her home, her family, filled her with dread. "You cannot make me leave," she said, her voice steadier now. "I know the forest, the cliffs, the snow. I can survive without your army." Eirik's gaze softened just slightly. "Perhaps," he said, "but the curse is patient, and so am I. I will wait as long as it takes." Days passed like shadows stretching over ice. Eirik's presence in the village became known to all. He did not destroy, he did not pillage, but his aura was enough to make hearts quiver. Children peeked from behind doors, women whispered prayers, and men stared at the ground, ashamed to meet his eyes. Astrid avoided him, yet could not stop thinking about him. There was a strange sadness in him, hidden beneath the armor of rage and power. Sometimes she thought she saw him staring at the fjord at dawn, as if searching for someone lost to the wind. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the snow in hues of fire and blood, Eirik appeared at the edge of her village again. This time he did not roar or demand. He simply stood, his great frame outlined against the dying light. "Astrid," he said quietly, "come with me. There is no shame in fear, but there is honor in courage. Your choice is not easy, but it is yours." Astrid's heart leapt. She had not expected such words, words that felt like an invitation rather than a command. She glanced at the villagers, their faces anxious, and then back at him. Something inside her shifted, a seed of understanding that this man, terrifying and powerful as he was, might also be capable of grief and longing. She began, but words faltered on her lips. What could she say to a man whose mere presence felt like a storm and a sanctuary at the same time? Eirik stepped forward, the snow crunching beneath his boots. "Time grows short," he said. "The northern winds do not wait, and neither does destiny. If you refuse, you risk more than yourself. Come willingly, and I will guard you as fiercely as my life allows." Astrid's thoughts turned to the tales she had read as a girl of heroes and monsters, of curses that twisted fate, of choices that shaped the world. She realized that the path before her was one of danger but also of awakening. To remain would mean safety, perhaps, but it would also mean the quiet death of her spirit. Finally, she nodded, not out of fear nor surrender, but out of a strange, undeniable pull. "I will go," she said. Eirik's face remained stern, but a small flicker of relief passed through his eyes. "Good," he said. "We leave at dawn. The journey is harsh and the nights are darker than any you have known, but you will not walk them alone." That night Astrid could not sleep. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and anticipation. She packed what she could carry, herbs, old scrolls, and a small knife her father had given her, and tried to steel herself for what was to come. Outside, the northern lights danced, painting the snow in green and violet streaks, as if celebrating or warning her. At first light, Eirik stood waiting, massive and silent, the wind bending around him. Without a word, Astrid joined him, and together they walked toward the cliffs where his ship waited. The villagers gathered to watch, their eyes full of awe and fear. Some whispered prayers for her safety, others cursed the fate that had drawn her into this giant's path. As they reached the edge of the cliffs, a voice rose on the wind, almost carried from another world. It whispered through the snow and ice, barely audible. "He will demand more than you can give, and yet you may be his only salvation." Astrid shivered, unsure if the voice came from her imagination or the spirits that haunted the northern lands. Eirik, sensing her unease, placed a hand near her shoulder. It was not a touch of possession, but a promise that whatever came, she would not face it alone. The ship waited, its hull black against the white snow, its sails furled and ready. Eirik led the way, climbing aboard with ease that belied his immense size. Astrid followed, her heart racing, each step echoing the rhythm of destiny. As the ship began to glide over the icy waters, Astrid looked back at her village, at the home she had known all her life. She felt fear, yes, but also a strange thrill. For the first time she sensed that her life was about to become something larger, something wild and untamed, like the northern winds themselves. Eirik stood at the prow, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "The journey will be long," he said, his voice carrying over the wind. "And the nights will be filled with trials, but if you endure, you may yet find strength you did not know you possessed." Astrid nodded, her hands gripping the railing. She did not yet understand what lay ahead, but she knew one thing: she had chosen this path, and with it, the frozen bargain that would bind her life to this giant of the north. And somewhere beyond the mountains and storms, the northern lights flickered once more, as if sealing their fates together. The ship rocked slowly in the frozen fjord, its black hull cutting through waters dark as midnight. Snow drifted across the deck, and the wind whistled like a chorus of unseen spirits. Astrid wrapped her cloak tighter around herself, feeling the chill reach through her bones. She had left her village, left everything familiar, and now the vast, empty sea stretched before her like a challenge from the gods. Eirik stood at the prow, tall and unyielding, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The wind played with his braided hair, and the fur of his cloak fluttered like a dark flame. Astrid watched him quietly. There was something beyond strength in him, something hidden, a shadow of loss that no sword or armor could conceal. "You watch too much," Eirik said, not looking back. His voice carried over the wind, calm and sharp at once. "I am learning," Astrid replied, "learning who you are, learning what this journey will bring." Irik's gray eyes flicked toward her, almost amused. "Be careful, Astrid. Curiosity in the north is a dangerous thing." The days passed slowly. Each morning, the northern sun rose pale and weak, casting long shadows across the icy waves. Eirik taught her survival, the way to read the sky for storms, how to navigate through shifting ice, and how to recognize danger lurking beneath the water. His instructions were harsh, yet patient, and Astrid began to see the man behind the warrior. There was discipline, yes, but also a rare tenderness in how he watched her struggle, never mocking, only guiding. One night they camped on a small frozen island, the moon reflecting off the snow in silver light. Eirik tended a fire while Astrid gathered herbs and food for the next day. The silence stretched, not awkward but full of unspoken thoughts. "You are quiet," Eirik said, breaking the stillness. "What do you think of all this, of me, of the journey?" Astrid paused, her fingers brushing a frozen branch. "I do not know, you are different from what I expected. Fierce, yes, but also sad." Eirik's gaze softened and he looked into the fire. "Sadness is not weakness," he said quietly. "It is memory, it is loss. I have lost much, Astrid, and yet I continue. That is all any of us can do." Astrid felt her chest tighten. There was something raw in his words, something that resonated deep within her. She wanted to ask him more, to know the details of his sorrow, but the wind carried the voice of the mountains. Sometimes, silence was safer than truth. The nights grew colder and the wind sharper. On one particular evening, a snowstorm rose suddenly, fierce and unrelenting. The ship struggled against the waves, ice forming along the edges. Astrid huddled near the mast, shivering, but Eirik remained steady, his hands gripping the ropes with ease. "You must hold on," he shouted over the roar of the storm. "Do not let fear take you. Fear is the frost that kills the spirit." Astrid clung to the ropes, her knuckles white. She had never felt such raw power in her life. And yet, despite the fear, there was a strange thrill, a sense of being alive in a way she had never known. Finally, the storm passed, leaving the deck covered in ice crystals that sparkled like shards of glass. Astrid looked at Eirik, who was brushing snow from his shoulders, his face calm despite the chaos they had endured. "You are remarkable," she said softly. Eirik's eyes flickered toward her. "You have survived much already," he replied. "And yet, this is only the beginning. The true trials lie ahead." It was in the days following the storm that Astrid began to notice the strange bond forming between them. She would catch him watching her from the deck, not with command or expectation, but with a quiet curiosity, as if he were trying to understand her very soul. And she, in turn, found herself drawn to him, not just as a protector or leader, but as someone who carried pain and longing that mirrored her own inner conflicts. One morning, they spotted land in the distance, a rugged coast, cliffs jagged and dark against the pale sky. Eirik's eyes narrowed as they approached. "This is where the first trial begins," he said. "Here lies the cursed forest. Within it, spirits guard secrets older than any kingdom. We must pass through to continue our journey." Astrid felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. She had studied stories of the northern forests, where trees moved like living beings and whispers of spirits lured travelers to their doom. And yet, she knew that turning back was not an option. The forest greeted them like a living wall. Trees twisted and leaned, their branches reaching like hands. Shadows moved in the corner of Astrid's vision, and strange sounds echoed through the frozen air. Eirik led the way, his presence like a shield against the unseen threats. "You must trust me," he said, his voice low. "And you must trust yourself. The forest feeds on doubt and fear. Only clarity and courage will keep you safe." As they walked, Astrid began to feel her own magic stirring, a warmth in her hands, faint at first, then stronger. She had always known she was different, but the forest seemed to respond to her presence, bending slightly to let her pass. Eirik noticed but did not speak. He simply watched, his expression unreadable. Hours passed and the path grew darker, the shadows thicker. Then suddenly the ground beneath them shifted, revealing a hidden hollow. From within, a cold wind emerged, carrying whispers that made Astrid's head spin. Eirik drew his sword, stepping in front of her. "Do not fear what is old," he said. "The spirits test us, but they cannot harm what is brave." Astrid closed her eyes, letting the warmth in her hands guide her. Slowly, the whispers faded and the hollow closed, leaving the path clear. She opened her eyes to find Eirik standing close, his gaze fixed on her. There was something in his eyes, a mix of awe, relief, and something unspoken, a recognition of her courage. "That was remarkable," he said quietly. "Not everyone survives the forest's first test." Astrid's cheeks flushed. "I did not do it alone. You guided me." Eirik's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment he looked away. "Perhaps," he said, "but the forest does not forget. It will test us again, and next time the stakes will be higher." The days turned into nights, and the nights into a strange rhythm of survival and learning. Astrid's respect for Eirik grew, not only for his strength, but for the man beneath it. The man who bore grief quietly, who fought without cruelty, who carried the weight of a cursed lineage with dignity and pain. And Eirik, in turn, began to see Astrid as more than a healer or scholar. She was brave, clever, and unafraid to challenge him when necessary. She had a fire in her that matched the storm within him, and for the first time in years he felt a strange warmth in his chest, a hope he thought had died with the loss of his past. One evening, as they rested near a frozen lake, Astrid spoke quietly, almost to herself. "Do you ever wonder if this curse will ever end?" Eirik looked at her, his reflection mirrored in the ice. "Every day," he admitted, "and yet it is not just the curse we fight, it is ourselves, our fear, our grief, our mistakes. Only by facing them can we hope to survive, and perhaps find peace." Astrid nodded, feeling the truth of his words. She understood that their journey was not only through forests and storms, but through the depths of their own hearts. The bond forming between them was fragile, yet powerful, a mix of trust, curiosity, and something unspoken that neither dared to name. As night fell, the northern lights danced above, green and violet ribbons stretching across the sky. Astrid and Eirik sat in silence, watching the spectacle. The air was filled with unspoken promises and questions, a tension that neither could ignore. And then, from the shadows of the forest, a sound emerged, a low, resonant growl, unlike anything natural. Eirik rose immediately, sword in hand. Astrid felt the warmth in her hands surge, her magic responding to the danger. "Something watches us," Eirik said, his voice steady but low. "And it is not human." Astrid's heart pounded. The shadows shifted, and for a moment the two of them were frozen, their eyes meeting, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever this was, it would not be easy. The trials of the forest, of their journey, were only beginning. Eirik's hand brushed hers as he spoke, not in intimacy but in warning and connection. "Stay close," he said. "Trust your heart, trust your strength, and trust me." Astrid nodded, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the strange, unspoken bond between them. And as the growl deepened, echoing through the frozen trees, they stepped forward together into the unknown. The forest was alive with whispers. Every branch seemed to bend toward Astrid and Eirik, as if testing them. The shadow they had glimpsed the night before did not follow immediately, but its presence lingered, felt in the tremble of leaves and the sudden hush of the wind. The trees themselves seemed to watch, their twisted limbs like silent sentinels of some ancient judgment. Astrid's hands glowed faintly as she walked, warmth spreading from her fingers like sunlight through frost. Her magic, dormant until now, stirred with the forest's pulse. She could sense the faint threads of life around her, the subtle energy of birds, the faint echo of spirits, even the lingering sorrow in the ice-laden ground. Eirik walked beside her, silent as a shadow, his eyes scanning the darkness. His sword was ready, but more than that, his presence was a shield. Astrid had come to understand that his strength was not merely physical. It was his patience, his awareness, and the careful balance of courage and restraint. "The forest is older than any kingdom," he said quietly, his breath misting in the cold air. "It remembers those who have walked here before us. It will not forgive weakness, and it will not allow arrogance." Astrid nodded. "I can feel it," she admitted. "It's alive. And it's testing us." Eirik glanced at her, and for a moment the stern lines of his face softened. "You have power," he said. "I can see it. But power is only useful if guided by wisdom. The forest will try to teach that." They walked for hours, the forest growing darker, denser, and colder. Snow swirled around them, sticking to their cloaks, and the ground became slippery with ice. Every step required careful attention. Then suddenly the path narrowed and the air grew thick, almost heavy. A faint glow appeared ahead, a pale light like moonlight caught in mist. Eirik stopped. "We are near the heart of the trial," he said. "Beyond that light, nothing is as it seems. The forest will try to turn our fears against us." Astrid's heart beat faster. She had expected danger in the form of wild beasts or treacherous paths, but something deeper, older, awaited. Her magic pulsed stronger, sensing the forest's hidden energy. She reached out with her senses, feeling threads of emotion, fear, and sorrow tangled like roots beneath the earth. "Be ready," Eirik warned. "Trust your instincts, and trust me." Together they stepped into the glowing mist. Immediately the forest seemed to shift. The trees leaned inward, their shadows twisting into shapes that mimicked the travelers. Astrid's eyes widened as she realized the forest was creating illusions, testing not only their courage but the bond between them. Images appeared, scenes from the past. Astrid saw her village burning, her people disappearing in smoke. She saw herself alone, abandoned and powerless. A cold fear gripped her and she stumbled. "Hold on to me." Eirik's voice was firm but gentle. He took her hand, anchoring her. "Do not let the forest control your mind. We are stronger than illusions." The shadowy forms twisted into new shapes, her family in danger, villagers calling out her name, even herself trapped in ice. Astrid's magic flared and a warm light spread from her hands, pushing back the illusions. Yet each time she did, the forest adapted, growing darker, more cunning. Eirik stepped closer, his presence steadying her. "You are not alone, Astrid. Remember that. Strength comes from trust, not fear." Her chest heaved as she nodded, focusing on the warmth in her heart, the presence of Eirik beside her. Slowly, the illusions weakened, dissolving into mist. The forest quieted as if acknowledging her courage. But the trial was not over. From the shadows, a low, resonant sound emerged, like the earth itself groaning. A figure stepped into the mist, tall, with eyes glowing faintly red. Its form shifted, neither human nor beast, yet familiar in a strange way, as if the forest had taken pieces of memory and shaped them into something alive. Eirik drew his sword, his stance protective. "Stay behind me," he commanded. "It will test you, but do not falter." Astrid felt her power rise, a mixture of fear and determination. "I am not afraid," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "Not while I am with you." The figure advanced, and the air grew colder. The ground beneath them cracked, ice splintering as if responding to the creature's presence. Shadows moved along the edges of the forest, whispering doubts and regrets. The creature spoke, its voice a low, echoing hum. "Fear binds you, doubt controls you. Only surrender will free you." Eirik stepped forward, sword raised. "We surrender nothing to shadows," he said. "We are stronger than your lies." The creature's form shifted, showing visions of Eirik's past, his failures, the lives he could not save, the people who had suffered under his strength. Astrid saw the pain behind his stoic expression, the grief he carried silently. And in that moment, she understood that his strength was forged from loss and sacrifice. "You carry too much alone," she whispered, stepping beside him. "You do not have to face this by yourself." Irik's eyes met hers, and for a brief moment the anger, pride, and sorrow in him softened. "It is not weakness to accept help," he admitted quietly, "but it is rare to find someone willing to see beyond the surface." Together, they focused their energy, Astrid's magic and Irik's courage blending like fire and ice. The creature recoiled, unable to maintain its form against the force of their united will. The forest seemed to shiver, as if it had not expected their resolve. Slowly the shadow dissolved, leaving only the mist and the whispering wind. Astrid sank to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Eirik knelt beside her, offering a hand. She took it, and he helped her stand. For the first time they did not speak of fear or trials. They simply existed in the quiet aftermath, the bond between them strengthened by the shared ordeal. "You are remarkable," Eirik said quietly, "not for your power but for your heart." Astrid felt warmth rise in her cheeks. "I could not have done it without you." Eirik's gaze lingered on her, and for a moment the world beyond the forest seemed to disappear. The wind stilled, the trees watched in silence, and only the two of them remained, bound by the trials and by a connection neither fully understood. The night deepened, and the northern lights flickered across the sky, painting the snow in green and violet streaks. Astrid and Eirik made camp near a frozen stream, the quiet crackle of a small fire their only companion. They shared stories in whispers, tales of loss and courage, of mistakes and hope. Each word brought them closer, revealing fragments of themselves that they had kept hidden from the world. "You have seen so much already," Astrid said softly, staring into the flames. "And yet you continue to fight. I do not understand how you carry it all." Eirik's eyes reflected the firelight. "It is not easy," he admitted, "and sometimes I fail, but each day is a chance to try again, and now I am not alone." Astrid's heart skipped. She realized in that quiet moment that she had begun to care for him, not just for his strength or his courage, but for the man who had carried so much pain, and yet still protected others with unwavering resolve. Eirik reached out, brushing a strand of snow-dusted hair from her face. "Astrid," he said softly, "the bond we share, it is stronger than any shadow, stronger than any curse. Remember that, trust it and trust us." She nodded, her breath visible in the cold night air. She felt a strange, unspoken promise between them, a promise of loyalty, courage, and perhaps something deeper that neither dared to name. As they slept, the northern winds carried whispers from the forest, faint but distinct. "The trial is only the beginning. The heart must endure before the body can survive." Astrid dreamed of ice and fire, of shadows and light, and of a hand reaching out to her in the darkness. She awoke to find Eirik watching the horizon, his sword resting at his side, his expression unreadable. Yet she knew he had fought the darkness even in his sleep. Together, they rose and continued their journey through the forest. Each step tested their courage, their wits, and their growing trust in one another. And though the shadows still lurked, the trials had changed them. They were no longer just warrior and healer, nor protector in charge. They were partners, bound by shared struggle, by growing understanding, and by the unspoken promise of what they might face together. The forest was not conquered, but for the first time they moved through it not as prey, but as allies. And the bond between them, forged in fear and fire, grew stronger with every step. The frozen lake stretched before Astrid and Eirik like a mirror to the sky. Its surface shimmered silver under the pale northern sun, but beneath the ice, shadows moved with a quiet, ancient menace. The air was sharp and still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next moment to unfold. Astrid shivered, though not only from cold. The trials of the forest had tested her in ways she had never imagined. Each shadow, each illusion, had pushed her to confront her fears, her doubts, and even the parts of herself she had long hidden. And now, as she stood beside Eirik, she realized the final trial awaited, one that would demand courage not just of the body but of the heart. Eirik surveyed the lake silently, his expression unreadable. "The curse lies beneath," he said at last. "All that has happened, the illusions, the forest, the shadows, they have led us here. What waits beneath the ice is the truth we must face together." Astrid nodded, feeling the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and let her hands glow with warmth, magic flowing like liquid light through her veins. She could feel the lake responding, the ice vibrating faintly beneath her touch. Together, they stepped onto the frozen surface. Each step sent ripples of shimmering energy across the ice, and the shadows beneath twisted and writhed as if sensing their approach. Astrid's heart pounded in her chest, but she held her ground, drawing strength from Irik's presence beside her. "Stay close," he murmured. "Do not let the darkness separate us. Whatever comes, we face it together." A deep rumble resonated from beneath the ice. Suddenly, a figure began to rise, a form dark and enormous, shaped from the very essence of the curse. Its eyes glowed crimson and its voice echoed like rolling thunder. "Fools," it intoned, "you dare challenge what has endured for centuries. You will break and your bond will shatter with you." Eirik stepped forward, sword raised, but Astrid held up a hand. "Wait," she said. "It is not only strength we need. It is understanding, trust, and together we are stronger than any curse." The shadow hesitated, its form wavering like smoke in the wind. Astrid focused, her magic flowing through the air, through the ice, connecting with Eirik's energy. A bond formed, invisible but powerful, a bridge between courage and will. The shadow attacked, crashing against the ice with a force that shook them to their cores. Eirik parried with his sword, each strike precise and controlled, while Astrid's magic flared, pushing back the darkness. Together they moved as one, his strength guiding her, her light protecting him. "You carry more than you realize," Astrid whispered, even as she fought. "We carry this together." Eirik's gray eyes softened and he nodded. "And together we endure." The battle raged, a clash of shadow and light, strength and magic, hope and fear. Astrid felt her energy wane, but the warmth of Eirik's presence renewed her, and in turn her magic bolstered him. For every wave of shadow the curse sent, they responded in unity, a perfect balance of courage and trust. Finally, with a surge of combined strength, Astrid sent a pulse of light deep into the heart of the ice. The shadow screamed, its form breaking apart like frozen glass shattering under the sun. The lake trembled, then fell silent, the ice calm once more. Breathing heavily, Astrid and Eirik collapsed onto the frozen surface, exhausted but triumphant. The curse was lifted, not destroyed by force alone, but by the unity of hearts, the courage to trust, and the willingness to face the darkness together. Eirik reached for Astrid's hand, his fingers brushing hers. "We did it," he said softly, "together." Astrid smiled faintly, the relief washing over her. "Yes, together." The forest around them seemed to breathe, the trees relaxing, their twisted limbs straightening as if sighing in relief. Light filtered through the branches, the shadows retreating, leaving only the gentle glow of the northern sun. Days passed as they made their way back to the fortress, now free of the forest's hold and the curse that had haunted Eirik's family for generations. Each step felt lighter, the weight of fear and shadow lifted, replaced by the warmth of trust and hope. Back at the fortress, the stones seemed less cold, the halls less intimidating. The wind still howled outside, but inside, a new light lingered, the kind born from triumph and shared struggle. Eirik walked beside Astrid through the familiar corridors, his steps slower now, his eyes not hardened with command but softened with reflection. "You have changed me," he admitted quietly as they reached the inner courtyard. "Not through force, not through fear, but through courage and trust. You've shown me what it means to hope again." Astrid's heart quickened. She had felt it too, the transformation within herself, the growth, the realization that fear could be faced and overcome, not by hiding, but by embracing both the light and the dark within her. "And you've shown me," she replied softly, "that strength is not always alone." that even the fiercest warrior can find someone to share the burden with. Eirik smiled faintly, a rare, honest expression that lit his face. Then perhaps this journey was never just about the curse, he said. Perhaps it was about us, learning to face what we fear together. In the days that followed, the fortress transformed along with them. Astrid's magic helped heal the land, the walls, and the people who had waited anxiously during their absence. Eirik's leadership softened, tempered by compassion and understanding, no longer ruled by fear or the weight of legacy alone. At night, they would sit together under the stars, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet reflection. Their bond grew stronger with each day, a mixture of respect, admiration, and the gentle stirrings of something deeper. Neither spoke the words aloud yet, but both felt the unspoken promise between them, a promise of loyalty, trust, and a future forged together. One evening, as the northern lights danced across the sky, Astrid felt a stirring within her, a sign, subtle but undeniable, that life had begun anew. Eirik noticed the change in her, his hand brushing against hers with a tenderness that had never been present before. "By winter," he said softly, his voice filled with wonder and reverence, "you will birth my children, and with them we will rewrite destiny." Astrid looked at him, a mixture of awe and joy shining in her eyes. "And together," she whispered, "we will face whatever comes." The wind carried their words across the fortress, across the cliffs, and into the mountains. The northern lights flickered as if blessing them, casting green and violet streaks across the snow. Somewhere, a raven called, its cry echoing like a herald of the future. Eirik pulled Astrid close, resting his forehead against hers. "We have endured the shadows," he said. "We have faced the curse, and now we begin anew together." Astrid rested her hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Together," she agreed. The days passed into weeks. The fortress thrived under their guidance, the land healed, and the people began to hope again. Astrid's magic grew stronger, nurtured by her connection to the earth, the forest, and to Eirik. And Eirik, once haunted by loss and sorrow, found peace in their shared purpose, in the bond they had forged through trials and trust. As winter began to fade, giving way to the soft hints of spring, the first signs of life stirred within Astrid. A quiet, gentle joy filled both of them, the knowledge that their future would be intertwined in ways deeper than either had imagined. On a bright morning, standing on the cliffs where they had first begun their journey together, Astrid looked out at the vast horizon. The wind was gentle, carrying the sense of thawing snow and distant forests. She turned to Eirik, who stood beside her, eyes scanning the horizon, yet always returning to her. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. Eirik's lips curved into a rare smile. "Yes," he said. "But we face it as we always have together." And as the sun rose, casting golden light across the mountains and sea, they knew that the curse was broken, the trials had been endured, and their hearts had been transformed. The story of their courage, their bond, and the new life they would bring into the world was only just beginning. The northern winds carried their promise, whispering to the mountains, the forests, and the fjord. Together, they have faced darkness. Together, they will shape destiny. And in that moment, Astrid and Eirik stood side by side, not as warrior and healer, nor as protector in charge, but as equals, as partners, as the beginning of a legend that would live long after the frost had melted.